Oh howdy all, grab yourself a drink, it is time for some PathOfExile discussion. Today I wanted to put together some discussion on what casual players can do in order to take advantage of the Affliction League mechanic. You've probably seen screenshots on the PathOfExile Reddit or stream clips of things like huge Scarab bombs where literally 100 or more winged Scarabs drop from the same monster, of currency bombs where dozens of divine orbs drop from the same monster. You might be thinking, that's cool for the people who can get to that. But what's the options for me? What's the options for someone who is not yet at the point of having a completely finished Atlas, who's maybe beaten Exile in the Eternal Labyrinth, can maybe take down the Searing Exarch and Eater of Worlds quest editions, but doesn't yet feel ready to take on any harder bosses than that? Well, what I've put together here is a strategy that does not require a particularly powerful character. I've set up my character to be roughly a snapshot of where they were on day 2 of the league, which means they've just been able to beat the Shaper and Maven's Invitation the Formed, and those fights were not trivialized. I'm using a 5-link main skill, and the rest of the gear is pretty much trash. With that in mind, I ran this strategy on a tier 1 map that was just alch-and-go. I even forgot to chisel it, and these were the results, what you can see in the inventory here. Everything except this Beric's Respite and these scrolls was something that was looted in this map. On top of that, there's exactly 20 unique items that I haven't picked up off the ground, as well as a single bad 6-link, which is pretty much 20 fusing orbs. This is a map in which I simultaneously got lucky and unlucky. Unlucky in that Delirium Mist didn't proc, but lucky in that my layout of the Wildwood was pretty favourable, and I was able to get a few more wisps than you might otherwise get. For as long as you have Einhar missions, this is simply an alch-and-go strategy, but once you do run out of Einhar missions, then you're going to need to use Bestiary Scarabs in order to continue with this. Additionally, there's a couple of things you can add on the map device. You can use the Anarchy Craft, and that will actually pay off very well, or you can use the Ambush Craft, and you'll just simply get better results if you're willing to go into Scarabs as well. Torment Scarabs, Ambush Scarabs, and in particular Reliquary Scarabs will definitely boost this strategy pretty well. Now, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be stuffing as many high rarity monsters onto the map as we're capable of doing. So let's go into the map. You'll see that I've got an Einhar mission here. That's because either you're using a Scarab or you're using a mission. And then we've got the Wildwood entrance at the start. We also have some ghosted monsters early, and what I'm doing at this point is just simply charge a Vial skill before we come in. Now, we want to follow yellow and purple wisps. Those trails are the ones we really want, but blue wisps are fine as well. I saw more down here as well, so I'm going to be picking up as many of these wisps as I can. Anytime that you get yellow and purple, that will give you unique items. On top of that, you'll also get more bonuses to all sorts of other RNG things that can happen. Now, there's a bunch of things where you'll get into fights with monsters in here. These are pretty much all worth doing. There's a couple of them that aren't, but generally speaking, if you come across one of these events, do it. That's just the one that's the event where it talks to you. And then you want to just keep exploring around trails, looking for a balance. So at the moment, I've got more purple than I've got yellow. So if I can find a trail of yellow, that's ideal. But I will take anything else as well. Last map that I did, I got very lucky and I had something like 1500 of everything. This time I'm probably not going to go as well as that, and I don't yet have any blue, which means we're not going to get the huge currency drops unless I get an extension on the time that I'm in here for. The extension for the time that you're in here for is the white events. Now, if you really min-max this, there's a number of strategies you can use where you can predict the layout of this very well. But this time we just have rarity and a bit of quantity. So this is not going to be anything like as good as last map, but it will still be solid, and we're going to have a lot of monsters here. Now, I mentioned that you can be in a little bit of danger here, even on a tier 1 map, and this is why I suggested it's probably good to be about at the point where you're Shaper capable, because some of these monsters don't mess around. If your character's not powerful enough to deal with Ghosted Rogue Exiles, then just drop the Ghosted Rogue Exiles part of the Atlas tree. Now we're just going to clear the whole map first, and then we'll come back and assess all the drops. I'm only going to pick up things that are S tier drops while we're doing that. For a bit of a comparison, these monsters, the EHP on these is probably like tier 16 map boss level for most of these. Like, they're not, this character's DPS is not extraordinary or anything like it, but it's also not derisory. And this is also the proc that comes up every now and again where you get 20 Rogue Exiles that appear in your map, and they're all ghosted. It may not be 20, but it's a very large number, which is good because there's 2 challenges tied to that. Already got one of them. Essences are a bit disappointing, I've found, with this league mechanic. Maybe it's just me, but I have not found them to be particularly synergistic with what we're trying to do here, whereas everything else is. Beasts in particular work really well. Harbinger is something, if you've got the last of the Atlas points, Harbinger is something you may wish to invest more in than I have. I just have 24% chance for them to spawn, and they're actually pathing nodes. So I needed those in order to get to some nodes that I wanted to take. They're just sort of in my way. That's the first section of the Glacier map. We'll go into the second section now. You'll see that we got a 22 beast spawn as well, which is another one of the uncommon procs where you get a lot more beasts than usual. Expedition is something I was experimenting with. Expedition is definitely a viable strategy you can use alongside this. The reason that I've gone off Expedition was that it was very, very, very easy to set up an expedition that you couldn't beat, especially when I was doing this strategy in higher tier maps. You could easily set up an expedition where it was like, if I want to get all the juicy stuff, I'm going to end up with a monster I can't kill in there, or maybe a lot of them. One of the other bonuses we've got here is a chance to get Craicic Chimerals as well. Once we kill Meat Kill here, this guy's got maybe hit points in the 25 million EHP range. Once he's down, we'll then start doing the expedition. And I'm not going to try and path this well, but I will take anything that says 300% rarity on monsters. Doesn't look like that's an option, so I'm just going to take big clusters of rare monsters, which are the runic monsters, the skulls. Oh, I missed this guy. Ultima Thule, he can go away. Honestly, haven't had a very good expedition there, but that's okay. Expedition's a bonus. I'm no longer specting to it at all. Yeah, I'll take a logbook. Even low tier ones are okay. There are definitely some rewards you'll get, though, that are much better if you're able to do this in a higher tier map. Whilst it's the case that beasts are slightly better in low tier than they are in high, everything else is better if you can do it, especially tier 8. Tier 8's the breakpoint where Headhunter and Mageblood get added into your loot drop pool. And so whilst you'll almost never see one of them, you go from absolutely never to almost never, and that's a big increase in the amount of them that can drop. That was a currency conversion bomb there. So currency bombs, when they go off, everything that the monster dropped that would have been a scoured item, I don't think drops at all. Everything that would have been a magic item drops as a pretty mundane currency, like an alteration orb or similar. Everything that would have been rare drops as a chaos tier currency. And everything that would have been a unique drops instead as a divine orb, an exalted orb, or an orb of annulment, and with a bias against orbs of annulment. So it's actually quite a favourable rolling system that they use. You can also get Scarab bombs as well, where everything that would have dropped as a scoured item becomes a rusted Scarab, everything that would have dropped magic becomes a polished Scarab, everything that would have dropped rare becomes a gilded Scarab, and everything that would have dropped unique becomes a winged Scarab. I got one of those in the last map that I did. The more item rarity you have on your character, the more and better these become. Finally, we have a Strongbox here. Strongboxes is something that is reasonable in this setup. I'm not absolutely settled that they're the right thing to do, but they work. And here we've got a couple of the Rogue Exile bodyguards, that proc. Didn't actually get anything of note out of them. And we have the boss himself, who is only wild empowered and so is just not going to be very good. Could get a unique off him, but that's sort of basically it. Yeah, didn't even get that. Anyways, let's go through and have a look at the drops that we got this time, including the uniques to get filtered out. The key thing with uniques is that they're a numbers game. The more of them that drop, the more chance there is of getting something that is genuinely rare and genuinely sought after. So here we have 2, Just trying to get my bearings. Actually, let's just pick up all the things that we are going to pick up first. Then we'll go back and we'll assess the number of unique items that we have here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it looks like we actually failed to kill this beast first time. See if he drops anything else. Still on 6 at the moment. Then we'll go out into the first stream, which will have a bunch more in it. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 12. 13. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. A couple of which are worth picking up as well. Legion boots. Oh no, that's the wrong Legion boots. 22, I missed that one. And what is that gavel? It's probably the bad one. It's always Trollnir. And honestly, Mjolnir is probably not worth very much this league either, because of how many uniques are dropping. But we shall find out. It is Trollnir. So it looks like we got a 20-something unique items again, and also we got a tremendous amount of just other drops that have the potential to add up. This is without performing very well in the Wildwood. Now, sometimes you're going to have a really good run through the Wildwood. When that happens, then you're going to end up in a much, much, much better spot. You'll start seeing more raw Divine Orbs and raw Exalted Orbs. Okay, so let's discuss the Atlas strategy we're using here, because it is very unconventional. We're doing a number of things here that go against PathOfExile standard wisdom. For example, we are speccing heavily into Torment. We are speccing heavily into Rogue Exiles, mechanics that you wouldn't normally see being used by many people. But there's a couple of reasons for this. The main focus of this Atlas is to add more monsters that have inherently high increased item rarity on them, and unique monsters fit that bill, rare monsters fit that bill, but especially modified rare monsters like beasts. Beasts in particular seem to be really, really good with this mechanic. Now, there's a number of other ways that people are playing this mechanic. One that's been very popular has been Abyss, and I think that Abyss is best if you're running the juiciest and toughest maps, but if you're just getting started with the mechanic, I would say potentially you might want to look elsewhere. Now, there's a couple of mechanics that you do not want to pair with Affliction at all. These are Ultimatum, Heist, Delve, and really anything else that doesn't provide additional monsters to your map. Or in the case of Ultimatum, it does add additional monsters, but those monsters don't drop normal loot. What you want is things that add additional monsters that have intrinsically high item rarity on them. And for that reason, we're speccing into Beasts. We're speccing into those parts of the Einhar support on the Atlas that increase the number of rare monsters we get. However, we're also taking a little bit of this wheel here, the Hunt for Craicic and Natural Selection, not because these help with the main strategy, but because they are just so good on their own that anyone that's running an Einhar strategy definitely wants these. Craicic Chimerals are the most important beasts that you can get. These are the imprint beasts. They're pretty rare, but this doubles the chance of them to come up. It's actually a little bit less than double, because it also doubles the chance of getting some undesirable Craicic beasts as well, but it is a big boost and you definitely want to take this. Natural Selection is an even bigger boost to the chance of getting those Chimerals, and so you definitely want to take it. Now, we are taking Seance. This is a very rippy node, but it provides a huge boost to the amount of item quantity and rarity that comes from 5 of the packs in your map. You definitely want this. This is one of the best things on the entire Atlas for this setup. We're also taking some of the other Torment support. Unrelenting Torment is very solid. 30% more quantity of items dropped by possessed monsters in your maps is a big deal because it is a multiplier. This will stack multiplicatively with other sources of more quantity, such as from the Wildwood. And we're taking Exiled Will and Ruckus, which will sometimes, including in the map we just ran, provide us with a very, very large number of additional ghosted unique monsters. So we definitely want that. It plays the strengths of the strategy. Next, I have some investment in Strongboxes. This is one of the more marginal parts, and I certainly won't fault anyone that rips these points off their Atlas and chooses to invest them in something else. Maybe you've got a favorite mechanic you want to spec into instead. That said, you definitely want these points if you are running this strategy in Vaal Temple, which is something that I've known people to be doing quite effectively. That, however, takes a monstrously powerful character. Now, we're taking Unending Nightmare as pretty much our only Delirium spec. We're taking Unending Nightmare plus That Which You Seek cluster, which means that some maps we're going to get a permanent Delirium Fog. This is fantastic when it goes off. This is a boost to rarity and quantity for pretty much every monster in the map, and it's a bigger boost the further away from the origin point you get. We're taking the other Rogue Exile clusters as well. These are at the more marginal end, so this is Royal Guard that you see here, and also down at the bottom we're taking Rogue Trader. These are both very skippable, but there's something that does provide a few additional powerful monsters in your map that will, of course, whenever they're spawned, have Exiled Will benefiting them as well, which means that they'll be both more dangerous, but also they'll have the considerable boost to item rarity that comes from being possessed by a tormented spirit. Finally, in addition to the Southern Einhar wheel, we're taking Scent of Blood, 10% chance for your maps to attract Beyond Demons. Whenever a map doesn't roll Beyond, which is most of the time, we're not putting a lot of effort into rolling Beyond on every map, this is going to give you a second chance to get those Beyond Demons present. When they show up, they're a big boost to the number of rare monsters that are present on the map, and this is something you always want to do. I've not yet made up my mind as to whether Endless Tide is a positive or a negative. I think that this is more optimized for if you were to modify this strategy to have encounters like Ritual in it instead. If you were to elect to go with Ritual instead of perhaps some of the Torment support that I've got on the tree, then I think Endless Tide starts to become very good. Finally, this is the way we path out of this origin, and you'll see that we are picking up Twice Tempted for an extra Strongbox, but again, those Strongbox points are pretty marginal, and you can definitely invest them in something else. Anyways, that's the core of the strategy. That's how you get about 20 uniques a map without doing any juicing. What happens when you are feeling that this is too easy, that you've outgrown this strategy? Well, then you simply repeat the same strategy in Tier 8 maps. When you're running in Tier 8 maps, then Headhunter and Mageblood are added to the drop pool, and also the monsters are going to be much tougher. You won't find that you're doing any better in terms of raw currency drops. You won't be getting more uniques, but the ones that do drop will have that tiny percentage chance to be something really good. The other thing that you can do to upgrade this strategy is start using more and better Scarabs. So instead of using either an Einhar mission, as I used on this map, or a rusted Bestiary Scarab, you might start using a polished Bestiary Scarab, plus a polished Reliquary Scarab, plus a polished Ambush Scarab, and also select Ambush on the map device. All these things allow you to invest a little bit more in each map and to get quite a bit more back, but all of them will also make the map more difficult. Sextants that synergize with your Atlas are another good option as well, although that's starting to get more to the things I'd recommend if you were doing a tier 16 strategy, which I'm actually going to recommend another guide for. Tier 8 maps will add Mageblood and Headhunter to the drop pool. They're extremely rare, of course, and it's my estimate that about 1 in 100,000 unique items that drop will be a Mageblood. Another 1 in 100,000 will be a Headhunter. However, while that's not a very large chance, 1 in 5,000 chance to get a Mageblood every map, 1 in 5,000 chance to get a Headhunter every map, it kind of does add up to 4 or 5 Chaos every map on average. So that's a significant one to consider. Finally, what if you completely outgrow this strategy? Well, then at that point, I'm going to recommend that you check out Craicic Tuner's guide to farming this mechanic on extreme endgame characters. Because ultimately, one of the best things about making a guide that's oriented at farming a mechanic that's aimed at casual players is the fact that people outgrow it. And once that happens, you're going to want to check out Tuner's guide. That's all I got on this. May your Vaal orbs have interesting results.